Welcome back to the Diesel Page. I'm your host, Jim Bigley. Aside from automotive writing and photography, I also work on a diesel project vehicle now and then. Here I am inside the engine bay of our latest 6.5-liter turbo diesel Chevy Blazer, cleaning the engine bay, repairing what needs attention, and upgrading the electrical system before the engine went back in. Be sure to check out the other videos on our YouTube channel for more about this 6.5 diesel Blazer as well as Lil Red. Today, I'm on a road trip and you're invited to ride along. Road trips are fun. Road trips in Lil Red are always more fun. This segment begins in Wisdom, Montana. From here we'll drive west while gaining an elevation on US Highway 43 over the next 26 miles, till we reach a junction with US 93 called Lost Trail Pass, at which point we'll turn north and wind our way into western Montana's beautiful Bitterroot Valley. We'll travel some 57 miles in total over the next hour, through some impressive scenery found here in western Montana, some at high elevation, over a mountain pass, negotiating traffic, and I may talk about some of the historic or interesting points along the way. Western Montana has a lot to offer, and it's been my home since before the Beach Boys recorded their hit 409. The mountains in the distance comprise a portion of the Continental Divide. In fact, we'll actually be crossing the Continental Divide in just a bit. Between here and there is what's called the Big Hole Valley, a large expanse containing cattle ranches, hayfields, sagebrush, and pronghorn antelope, at an elevation of around 6,000 feet. If you like brutal winters and only a few people, this is your place. It's hard to imagine, but Lil Red first became drivable in April of 2004. Lil Red was first shown internationally in a magazine article I wrote for the November-December 2004 issue of Truck Trend magazine, and the truck has appeared in as many as 8 other magazines in total. Using EFI Live and nitrous, the LB7 eventually reached a maximum of 632 horsepower and 1,219 pound-feet of torque on a chassis dyno. Part of what made this possible was an ATS Allison Extreme transmission, which handled the power just fine. This is how Lil Red looked in the fall of 2002. Just after receiving the brand new LB7 Allison and transfer case from GM Powertrain. I could see past the faded paint and dated trim of the 1989 Chevy Sportside. I actually was working with GM Powertrain at the time to determine the feasibility of using the Duramax in repower projects. While it took a year and a half to get to the point of driving the truck with the Duramax, the actual swap itself only took about 4 months, including the GMT 800 dash swap, suspension and chassis mods, a complete makeover of the interior, and a custom repaint and mods on the outside. Big Hole National Battlefield is coming up on our right. If you look toward the right at the far hills, you'll see a large semicircular clear area on the hillside. That hillside is where native peoples would pasture their horses while traveling through the area. This is also where a somewhat infamous battle occurred between the Nez Perce Indians, led by Chief Joseph, and the U.S. Army in 1877. The Nez Perce fought a delaying action against the U.S. Army's 7th Infantry Regiment here on August 9th and 10th during their failed attempt to escape to Canada. This action, now called the Battle of the Big Hole, was the largest battle fought between the Nez Perce and the U.S. government forces in the 5-month conflict in what became known as the Nez Perce War. The men, women, and children comprising Chief Joseph's group managed to escape the army and then headed in a northeasterly direction, hoping to cross into Canada before the next engagement with the army. They didn't make it, and this became yet another unfortunate episode involving native peoples. A National Historic Site and Park is located just to the right of the highway up ahead that provides a lot more information about the battle and the Nez Perce people themselves. It's worth a visit if you're new to the area. This area had a white pine beetle infestation about 10 or 15 years ago that killed many of the trees you see here along the road. Unfortunately, it's a part of the life cycle of lodgepole pine that this happens. And usually after a sufficient number of trees have been killed, the next lightning strike in the area usually sends it all up in smoke. So this area suffered a burn about 5 years ago, and you can see evidence of that also along the way here. Not everything burned, but enough of it did to where it'll have a new regeneration in life here along the way. So this is a beautiful area, even with the burn. It's an area that I have spent a lot of time in through the years, through the decades, and certainly the hunting and the fishing, recreating, off-road vehicle use is all something that I enjoyed in this area for a long time. For a couple of summers after high school, I actually worked in this area running a rubber-tired skidder, skidding logs for a timber company that was in the local area. I actually enjoyed it. Who doesn't like running a diesel, doing things involving lots of power? But yeah, it was a fun time. It's always during the summer when you can get around in a rubber-tired machine. But, I enjoyed it. remember seeing any speed limit signs on this stretch of the road. Most reasonable people don't need a speed limit sign, but I'm probably going about 70 miles an hour right here, maybe a little higher. It's plenty safe. You have to watch out for wildlife. There are a lot of deer and elk in this area, as well as a few moose. And the trees are right up next to the road, so you have to be careful. You have to be aware. But I didn't see any game this trip. But it's always a fun ride. This is such a scenic view for a trip. So. We've been gaining in elevation since we left Wisdom, but here is where the actual pass begins. It's only a couple of miles before we reach the top of the grade, and it's called Chief Joseph Pass. And I'll point it out just as we go by the sign on the side of the road. It says an elevation of 7,200 feet. This is an interesting pass. I once had to stop right about where we are right now to let 3 large bull elk cross the road in front of me. So you never know where you're going to see game. And I've driven this road many times in the winter. It's usually snow-covered, icy. The road crews usually keep it sanded, but you always have to be careful. Now the sign for Chief Joseph Pass is coming up on the right. It's a Forest Service special interest sign. We go by it pretty quickly, but it's right there, right there. There's the sign. And the pin on the map shows us where we are on the map now. We've come quite 26 or 27 miles from Wisdom at this point. And now we're descending from Chief Joseph Pass down to a saddle. And the elevation of the saddle is about 7,000 feet, and it's called Lost Trail Pass. On the far hillside, you can see what is Lost Trail Ski Area. At just over 7,000 feet elevation, Lost Trail is located on the border between Idaho and Montana on US 93. At this point, we're about 90 miles south of Missoula, Montana. Coming up as a junction, this section of US 43 ends where it meets US 93. Here you can travel south, or turn left, 46 miles to Salmon, Idaho, or you can turn right about 90 miles and wind up in Missoula, Montana. Today we'll turn north, but we'll stop well short of Missoula. Way back when I was just 15 years old, a friend and I drove to Salmon, Idaho over this pass, and just 46 miles south of Lost Trail Pass on US 93 to Salmon, Idaho. My friend had driven his dad's car, and we had a tow chain with us. Now at this point, this was the peak of the muscle car era, and the 1955 Chevys were cheap. Kids knew their value, but older people with money didn't. At a small auto salvage yard in Salmon that day, I bought a rust-free 1955 Chevy Bel Air two-door hardtop, which was complete except for an engine, transmission, and the entire front clip, fenders, hood, and grille. I paid just $15 for the car and a clean title. My first car. So how did we get it home? Some 80 miles away? Why, we towed it, of course. I hadn't completed driver's training at the time, so I didn't have a driver's license. But we were optimistic. I'm mentioning this here because from Salmon we traveled north to the top of Lost Trail Pass with that 55 Chevy in tow and me at the wheel. Once arriving at the top of the pass, I coasted that 55 Chevy all the way down from the top of Lost Trail Pass. It must have been quite a sight to passing motorists seeing that 55 Chevy without a front clip or engine. The brakes worked just fine though. Never did see a cop, and we arrived home in one piece. That 55 Bel Air was perfect. No rust, no dents, no broken glass, perfect interior. Paint was a little sketch, but it was perfect in my eyes. My friend's father owned an auto wrecking yard at the time, so getting a 265 V8, Power Glide, complete front clip, and all of the other incidentals didn't take more than a week or two. Oh, how I wish I still had that car. And then that same year, a friend of the family asked me to go with him to Wisdom for a load of lodgepole pine logs. He had an 18-wheeler self-loader logging truck and wanted some company for the day. I thought, hey, it's a diesel. It makes noise. It's a truck. So yeah, I go. I'm mentioning this here because of the coasting down the pass story. Now, being a truck driver with a load of logs, he always handled corners slowly and safely. Waved at the guys you go by for letting us pass. But our logging truck driver, he also had a bit of a wild side to him too. So he usually traveled a little faster than maybe he should have. When we get to the spot in the road where he loosened things up with the brakes, I'll point it out. Now we were in the truck. This is the last sharp corner. There's a bit of an S-curve coming up. Right about here, we had been traveling about 45 in the truck, but right about here he kicked it out of gear and put it in neutral. Took his foot off the brakes and let it go. And so began a wild ride in an 80,000-pound behemoth. It's surprising how quickly you can gain speed with that much weight. The bottom of the pass is coming up in about a mile. At this point, I never did look over at the speedometer to see how fast we were going. I probably didn't want to know. Going much faster than we are right here. And here we're doing about 70. This is the bottom of the pass right here. And we were making good time. A few miles farther on is a gas station store called Sula Store. I did look over at the speedometer when we went past. I'll tell you how fast we were going when we got to that store. In the meantime, we're coming up on an area called the Sula Basin. Sula got its name from the first baby born in this area. Her name was Ursula. So somehow that got shortened to Sula, and it became known as the Sula Basin. Now this is important because while it wasn't called Sula Basin in the Lewis and Clark journals, this particular area is talked about quite a bit in the Lewis and Clark journals. This is where the explorers met an Indian group, native people that were using the area during the summer, during the late August area. And so this is part of the route that Lewis and Clark took on their way west. At this point, we're probably doing about 80 miles an hour. No point really to go faster than that. During the summer, there's always a lot of holiday travel, tourist touristers. And once we get through this stretch, we're in a winding canyon where things will slow some. We're still a couple of miles away from Sula store. That day in the logging truck, we were whistling right here. Luckily, in the 1960s, there wasn't that much traffic here. Yeah, this is the Sula Basin. You'll see the Sula store coming up on our right. Now in that logging truck, we'd been coasting all this distance, and we went by this store at 85 miles an hour. Once we got past the store and crossed this bridge, he got on the brakes pretty hard because we got a corner coming up. But we got through the corner just fine. And we didn't talk about our trip for quite a while. It's hard to pass in this stretch. If you're on a motorcycle, you can usually pass pretty easily, but you can't see far enough to be safe most of the time, depending on the closing speed. This particular stretch of road was rebuilt about 10 years ago. It was widened and made safer. It took out a lot of the sharpest corners. But there are passing zones now and then, especially if you Have a little bit of accelerator pedal. Now here we're going along about 75, I would guess, something like that. I don't remember exactly. At this point in time, no one had passed us. We passed a few cars since we left Wisdom. So as I mentioned before, no one had passed us at this point in time. But you never know. Again, I'm going pretty fast. Then that happened. So we eventually catch up to him again because he gets hung up in traffic. But on a motorcycle, you have a lot more passing opportunities than you do in a vehicle. But if you look out to the left here, you'll see the East Fork of the Bitterroot River. At one time, it was a blue ribbon trout stream. Not very many people fished for trout here in western Montana. And so there were a lot of fish, a lot of large fish. And I got to experience that when I was a kid. It was one of the great experiences of my youth, was to fish here. We're now entering the main part of the valley, the Bitterroot Valley here in western Montana. This valley from here, the next 50 miles, is where I grew up. It's a great place to live. Winters are a little cold and snowy, but the summers are glorious. Hunting and fishing, camping, off-roading, ATVs, wildlife, plenty to do. And for most of the Bitterroot Valley, this is the trail that Lewis and Clark traveled when they came through this area on their way west. We'll be entering a small town called Darby here in just a few miles. This shot here, you can see the beauty of the valley. The valley is fairly narrow, and you can see the mountains. If you're standing out there on the road, you can see the mountains from on either side. The mountains to the west or to the left side of the frame here are more rugged. The peaks can go up to 10,000 feet, but most of those in view are probably around 8,000 to 9,000 feet. The Idaho border is about 12 or 13 miles to the west of where we are right here. And most of that is in the Bitterroot wilderness areas. Coming up on the top of the bluff overlooking the highway to our left, just after we round the next corner, if you look up, you can just see the top of what is a ranch house. You can see it here in this shot. That shot is of Nez Perce Ranch. That's where Kevin Costner shot most of his episodes of Yellowstone. So it became quite a drama place for the local area here. But the ranch itself is beautiful. It's got lots of acreage, and it looks historic. The entrance to it is right here on the side of the road, right to your left now. In another mile or so, we will be entering Darby. Kind of a sleepy town that sprang up originally as a mining and a timber town. It was founded in the 1870s and grew slowly over time. At one time there were 2 or 3 sawmills at either end of town, and there was a mine processing plant back about a mile off the road here to your right. You can see on the map here that we have pinned Darby. If we continued on, we would wind up in Missoula, but we're not going to be going that far today. Darby really hasn't grown much since the 60s. The local area hasn't anyway. It's probably doubled in size since, say, 1970. Ravalli County itself, which comprises this area and up north about another 50 miles. In the 60s, the population was about 7,000 people. Today, it's approaching 60,000. Thanks for riding along with me today. Let me know how you like the video, what you would like to see different, what sort of subject material you'd like to see. Please post your comments below. This is our Duramax conversion guide that was put together after completing Lil Red. All of the hard parts of the swap are covered in this color guide. The tremendously successful Duramax 6600 diesel engine can be easily tuned to produce more horsepower than you could possibly use on the street, while delivering 25 miles per gallon at 75 miles per hour in a truck like that shown here. We've proven that a decent backyard mechanic who can perform some light fabrication and who understands basic automotive wiring diagrams can successfully complete a project like this, and for less money than you might think. With care and attention to detail, the information presented in this guide will help you produce a high-quality conversion of your own that looks as though the truck left the GM assembly plant with the Duramax under the hood. The swap guide shown here contains 62 pages with more than 117 images and diagrams, and easy-to-understand text that will guide you through the process. Information covering the important electrical connectors, connector pinouts, and wiring considerations that are necessary to produce a running vehicle are included, and you can contact Jim through the comments section right here in YouTube, or visit the forum blog linked below. To visit our online forum blog featuring this truck and its build, there's a ton of free information there. Click the link in the description below. And finally, please like and subscribe and post your comments. You can help us reach even more people. Thank you for watching.